Hey everyone, this is Heather with Campbell Revival Ministries. Hey, I'm coming back on here tonight. I just, the last few days I realized that, here I have a ministry and I haven't given my testimony and talked about the things that I grew up with. And I know my husband did a while back when we first started. He did a few videos and talked about some certain things. And so anyways, I thought it's probably best if I do that because obviously I want everyone to know kind of where I come from and, why I'm doing what I'm doing. And just, just so if there's anybody out there that needs somebody to talk to, that they have somebody in me to talk to. Because I have compassion for a lot of people and the situations that they're in. And, it's not easy. Life is just not easy. We would like it for, to be, but sometimes in order to know the Lord and get to know the Lord, we got to go through our valleys. And, for those that don't know the Lord, sometimes they got to hit rock bottom in order to find him. So anyways, if you I have my boys in the other room, Nathan's watching Tristan, and obviously Nathan's making Tristan giggle. So if you hear them from time to time, that's them. But anyways, you guys, I'm just going to kind of go through this, like my life story. And I haven't been a very open person. Like, very few know my story. And just because there's a lot of things that I, compacted in a storage container in my mind and shoved it away. And, it's taken years for me to open it back up and deal with it. And so I'm just kind of going to go over and talk through it. And, if you guys have any questions over it or, need to reach out or anything like that, I'm open. My website, you can contact us through there, prayer requests and things like that. You can send those in. So my life, well, right before my life began, I would say, my parents obviously got married, and, my mom, grew up in a well-to-do family. My grandpa was a home builder, and, he built up neighborhoods and things like that. And so they were comfortable. And back in those days, the women didn't really work, and, more housewife type. Anyways, but my dad was a full bird colonel in the Air Force. And he was in special operation forces and was very high up. And, he started his military, in the Army with Vietnam, and then he transferred to the Air Force. And, I don't know a whole lot about it. I know a little bit. And anyway, so they got married. They were originally from Oklahoma, but he was stationed in Illinois. And a lot of this stuff I had to find out for myself because my mom wouldn't talk about it. Anyways, they were stationed in Illinois, and she, after I guess a few months, she found out that she was pregnant with me. It wasn't planned or anything. And, my mom had already had 4 kids from a previous marriage. And that marriage didn't, it ended pretty bad. And so anyway, she already had 4 kids. And then, of course, finding out that she was pregnant with me. From what she has told me since a very young age, since I can even remember, she said that she had to leave him because he wanted an abortion and she refused to do it. So she left him and moved back to Oklahoma, where my grandparents got her a house and, for all of us and to live in. Well, growing up, until I was probably 4 to 5, I mean, we were pretty poor. My grandma and grandpa had to help us out from time to time, and my grandma was always there for us. It seemed like just anytime we needed anything, she was there, and sometimes we did without. And then my stepdad came along, and I knew I didn't have a very good feeling about him. And I remember throwing tantrums. I mean, I was like 4 or 5 years old when he kind of came into the scene. And before they got married, I would throw tantrums. Like, I would seriously tell my mom that I was against it. I didn't like him. And of course, I didn't know what that was. And of course, my dogs want in now. They're banging on the door. But at that age, I didn't know what discernment was. But anyways, I just felt it all over me. I didn't like him. And but they still got married. And later, he was very abusive to her. And I remember she had gotten pregnant a few different times, at least 2, maybe 3 times. She had miscarriages, and my stepdad was very abusive. I witnessed him kicking her in the stomach while she was pregnant, throwing her across the room, just horrible, horrible things. And of course, my brothers, couldn't do anything, but he was a big guy. I mean, he was like former football quarterback back in the high school days. And it was really rough. And, I remember one time she ended up miscarrying while we were Christmas shopping at Walmart one year. And she had to be rushed to the hospital. And then she, I guess before that, she miscarried one time, and at home, and I witnessed a fetus, and a miscarried fetus. I witnessed it I was 5 by then. And that was traumatic. I mean, that was just, no child, that's a given. No child should ever have to go through that. But, life happens. But she ended up getting pregnant again and having my little brother. And, I loved him to death, and still do. He's much older, but I still love him. And but anyways, fast forward a little bit. We traveled with him, and for business. He had a business, and we would travel all different states and stuff. And I think we were in either Montana or Wyoming. I think we had just gotten back from Montana and we were in Wyoming. And they started fighting and he was abusive. My mom called the police. And that led to us taking the Greyhound bus system all the way from Wyoming to Oklahoma. And that in itself, I mean, the smells, everything. I mean, if I ever come across a smell or something like that, it triggers that memory. Yeah, I won't. I remember being in the military and they were wanting to send me home on a Greyhound bus, and I said, nope. And they were like, well, I mean, you can fly, but it'll be out of your pocket. And I said, I'll pay for my own flight. I'm not taking a Greyhound bus. I'm not doing it. But anyways, so they ended up getting a divorce shortly after that. I want to say it was pretty shortly after that. And I would think I was about 7 or 8, maybe 8. And after that, we moved into another house, and I mean, we were dirt poor. Like, didn't have electric half the time, didn't have water half the time. Just, food. I remember waking up hungry. I remember not going to school because I was so hungry. I probably should have. I mean, at that age, I didn't. That wasn't my. That would have been my mom's decision. Like, you need to go to school because at least you could eat. But I mean, I was so weak that I didn't even feel like getting up to go to school. And at that time, my brothers, my older brothers were old enough to work, and they would try to, bring food home and things like that for us. And, a lot of times my brothers were like especially my older brother, was very much of a father figure to me. I was very close to my brothers. I mean, just, I felt no fear because I had my brothers, but anyways, I was 9 and it was during the summer, and I remember my mom having to she had something to deal with, like with the court. I didn't know what. I mean, she was being the parent, not telling me what was going on. And so I remember that morning I walked in, I saw my brothers waking up, and I saw my mom pull up, and this is like, I don't know, mid late morning. And she was just, I walked out to the driveway and she was just sobbing. She was crying, and I was like, what's going on? She goes, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. And she was just devastated. And she goes, your dad got custody of you, and you're going to have to leave and move in with him. Now, at this time, I had only seen my dad literally a handful of times. Like, I didn't even know my dad. I didn't even call him my dad. He lived out of state a lot of times or was stationed other places, and I maybe saw him a Christmas here or there. He might have, taken me to go get a toy or something like that once, maybe twice, from birth to 9 years old. And so I didn't really know who he was. And so of course I felt like I was ripped from my mom. I mean, I'm going to somebody that's supposed to be my dad, but I didn't know him as a dad. And ended up living on a farm with him, which is like secluded. There were no friends or, kids around to like make friends. And I mean, especially until like school started. And then finally I found a friend that lived maybe a quarter mile up from my house, but that wasn't like, hey, let me go walk up to her house type thing. And it was just, it was very hard. It was very, I mean, I would be homesick a lot. I mean, I didn't want to be there. I didn't know who he was. I didn't even call him dad. I called him by his name. And on top of that, I knew that he didn't want me in the first place. So why would he want me now? Like, why would he want me now? And I'll kind of back up a little bit. I remember my dad was the only one that would pay child support. And nothing against my brother's dad. I love him. I know him and I love him. He's a good person. But at that time, he wasn't paying child support. And so we were literally living off of what my dad was giving my mom. And at that time, it was $300 a month. And, but before all that happened, because I remember my mom like talking to the landlord and things, that my dad was splitting up the child support in quarters, like in quarterly, like split up $300, like $125 a week. And that put her in a position where she couldn't make the rent, a full rent payment. And it was really, it was really, really hard on us. And it set us up, set my mom up to, by the time she got to court, obviously, there were other things that she wasn't making enough money for us to live off of. And I get all of that. But, it was shady. My dad was shady on it. I knew that, him and my stepdad lived on the farm there right before I had to go and move in with him. And, I knew they kind of did their, conspiring together, and it was wrong. It was just wrong. So anyways, the homesick, and, my mom would pick me up every weekend, but it started getting to where she wouldn't, whether it was work or just, my mom she was starting to have just some mental like paranoia and different things going on with her that she just wasn't, really in her right mind, and depressed. She was obviously depressed. And so there were times that I would be sitting out waiting for her to pick me up, and we wouldn't get a call or anything like that. And I'd be waiting out there for an hour or two and thinking maybe, she got off work late or something like that, and she would never pick me up. Well, it kind of got sporadic, and to the point where my dad was like, okay, she's going to have to call in order to be able to pick you up. Well, my mom was just irate over that. Like, it took me begging for my mom to call and get permission to pick me up. Even though she really didn't have to give permission. It was her right to pick me up. But being that I had to sit and wait and not knowing and all this kind of stuff. So that just made it even worse. And, there were times that my brothers would pick me up, and, even my sister that was from Dallas, in the Dallas area, she would come and take me out for the weekend and things like that. And I got to see her, which was great. And, and I have older siblings with a brother and sister on my dad's side that would come out to the farm and would fish, and um, we had like ponds, and it got to the point where I would just find stuff to do. Like, cattle make the best bike trails in fields. I have to tell you that much. They make the little paths, and it's perfect for bikes. So I would take my bike. I mean, we had like 160 acres, and I would just take my bike and go, trail riding basically. And or I would pick up my fishing pole and I'd go fishing, and or help around the farm or whatever. For a city girl, it was kind of a shock. I mean, it was a little boring there at first, and lonely, and just whatever. But I tried. I really tried. But we eventually ended up moving into a neighborhood close by later on, and where I had friends and stuff like that there. And but it got to a point where my mom sometimes wouldn't even pick me up for like 6 months. Just wouldn't even pick me up for 6 months. And I love her. I mean, completely. I didn't hold it against her. I think I understood a little bit more than what some would understand. And it got to me, and it just having to be with my dad as much. And I will say this, let me go back, because right before we moved to the neighborhood, my dad remarried. He had a wife previously, and he remarried her again. And she ended up having an ex-husband that wasn't quite the ex-husband just yet, but who found out about all of this and her staying out with us on the farm and stuff like that. And it was just to the point he came out banging on the door one night, and if my dad wasn't in the shower, it would have turned out a lot worse. Let me just tell you that. But this man ended up later threatening to kidnap me. As if I needed that on top of everything. But, I ended up having to be deposed because they were going through court, and I had to sit in the same room with that man along with my dad and, of course, all the attorneys. And, they asked me a bunch of different questions, and one of them was, were they staying in separate rooms? Well, they like to make me think they were, but, I wasn't stupid. And, I had a fear of my dad. My dad was strict. And I was put in that position. I didn't know what to do. As much as I wanted to tell the truth, I didn't want to tell the truth and get in trouble, like, seriously later. And so I lied about it, and I said, yeah, they've been separate. And I held that against my dad and my stepmom. I held it against them because don't put me in that situation. Like, you shouldn't have put me in that situation. But, it just got so bad, and I didn't see my mom, and, I wanted to see my brothers, and they were trying to pick me up, and my dad wouldn't allow them to pick me up. He would only allow my mom to pick me up. So it started to where I, well, what the heck? And I would start to say, no, it's my mom picking me up. And it would be my brothers picking me up. And I just needed to get away. I didn't care that I was lying or anything like that. And I mean, I cared, but it was like I have to get out. Like I cannot be with them. I got to have a break. I got to get out. And so I would stay with my brothers on weekends and things that were supposed to be my mom's weekends. And sometimes I would see my mom, or whatever, but it would be my brothers. My brothers would pick me up. And I had a blast with them. But anyways, turned 6. Well, when I was, I think, 12 or 13, I tried to run away. And somehow or another, my dad found out about it. And my brother was going to like pick me up and and take me, because I was like, I had it. I couldn't do it with them, with my dad anymore. And my stepmom, oh, I don't even get me started on her. And so my dad found out about it and grabbed his rifle and sat outside and had me talk to one of my sisters, and my sister was trying to like calm me down and trying to get me to stay. And so I ended up staying. And when I was 16, the final, just to the point where I literally just couldn't do it anymore. I had come home from school, and my dad had locked up all the phones in one room, like locked the door, locked it up and everything, because I was grounded. And I'm sure it was for, going on a weekend or whatever. I don't remember. But I was grounded. And so I come home, and in the laundry room, the water pipe had burst. Like on the hose on the washing machine had busted, and there was water everywhere. Ankle deep. And my dad had a shelf of alcohol bottles all up in the laundry room, and being that the drywall was soaked with water, all of it had come crashing down, and it just million pieces of glass everywhere. And we had a dog inside, and of course I couldn't call anybody. Like I didn't have a phone to immediately call, and I didn't know, with electrical and things like that, with the water and being so high. And so I was able to get my dog out, and I ran across the street to a friend's house where I was able to call the fire department. And the fire department came out. And let me tell you, those guys were awesome. Totally awesome. They cleaned up everything. They took squeegees and squeegeed the floor, picked up all the glass. I did not have to lift a finger. They cleaned it all up for me as much as they possibly could. Of course, my parents were gone. I couldn't get a hold of them. This was back when they barely had the little, Nokia flip phones. And I remember them just shaking their heads like, who locks phones up to the point where you can't call for an emergency? I don't care if you're hiding a phone call to a friend or not. You don't lock up your phones for an emergency. Just like this. And which a lot of people in our neighborhood knew my dad and knew them, and wasn't good. And so a few days later, I made my escape and went out with friends, and I think the fair was there, and then I ended up staying with my brother, one of my brothers, and ended up, switching brothers. I think I was gone for like, I don't know, a couple months or so. And of course, that was during school. And well, my dad had hired a private investigator, which happened to be one of my friend's parents, and I don't think he was really looking for me. I think he understood the situation, and I don't think he was really putting forth the effort. I mean, the way God works. But anyways, I had, being that I was out of school, I grew up in Yukon, and I'm telling you what, I will remember this man's name for the rest of my life, and it was Dr. Spaeth, who was the superintendent. And he got a hold of me somehow. I can't remember how, but he got a hold of me and said, will you please, I know you don't want to, see your dad and stuff like that, but will you please just meet with me and so I can talk to you about school, because I really want to get you back in, but I have some options for you. And so I met with him, and he said, we're doing this new thing here in Yukon for basically students like you that need to either work or whatever the situation may be. And he goes, you can fast track getting out of high school. It's no different. No, it doesn't, go against any of your credits or anything like that. And he goes, it's just you're working at your own pace, and you can do half days and, still hold a full-time job if you need to or whatever. And he goes, but the one thing that you would have to do is get your dad's permission. And he goes, I know it's going to be hard, but you're going to have to get his permission. And the only way I could get his permission was for me to move back, which that in alone was scary. I mean, I remember calling DHS. I remember calling the police just to try to escort me back to his house, and they wouldn't do it. They would not do it. In fact, they were pointing the fingers. Well, have you called the police department? And the policeman, well, have you called DHS? Yeah. And they did nothing. They couldn't do a darn thing for me. I remember that. And so I ended up having a friend's mom drop me off one night, and he came to the door. My dad came to the door with a gun. And when I walked in my room that night, everything was gone. Like, other than like a few little things, everything, my pictures, I mean, everything was gone. Everything that I've saved, everything. And I asked my dad, I said, what happened to all of the stuff, And he goes, well, I don't know. Let me go ask him. My stepmom. And he came back, and he said, well, she threw it all away. Okay. If that's what it takes. Okay. So I started going back to school, and, I just really had a hard time with being there again. Just trying to make it through. And he was building a house at another property, and so I would go and help with that. And it was tough, to the point where he finally just dropped me off at my grandma's house one day and just said, there you go. And which, that's where my mom was staying at the time. And that's probably the best thing that he could have done, is done that. The only thing is that he had suspended my driver's license. So in Oklahoma, I don't know if it's still like this, but I'm sure it is. But, until you're 18, your parents can suspend your driver's license. So I had to have everybody, like anybody and everybody. My grandma drove me just about everywhere, and friends and whatnot. And, to work, I got a full-time job, and, and then, plus going to school and stuff. And I finally, at 17, I went for emancipation, because, he didn't give up his rights to my mom or, to my grandma or anything. And I still, trying to do a job, trying to, make it to school and things like that. And I needed a car. I needed to be able to drive or something. And so I filed for emancipation. Well, we get to the court and everything, and his attorney was like, your dad really wants to settle, and he really wants to become, be a family. He's really sorry for everything, and he just wants everything to be back to normal. And me, I'm very forgiving and sometimes naive, not near as naive as I used to be, but I was like, well, that's really all I wanted, and of course they agreed to do the driver's license. And at that time I had a savings account that I could have used. And I said, that's fine. That's really all I wanted. I need my driver's license. And if he wants to be friendly, and great. Well, paperwork and all that wasn't drafted or anything like that. And my dad did not fulfill any of it. He did not fulfill any of it. And, it took me a long time to forgive him. A long time. And I've forgiven him. He's, his parents raised him, and, their parents raised them. And it just seems like, he just wasn't a person to be, it was hard enough for him to even show love, let alone, he just wasn't a good dad. I mean, he didn't have that. He just didn't have it in him, unfortunately. And, but, I've made my peace with it. I've forgiven him. I've tried to reach out and things like that, but I don't have a relationship with him at all. And he's not tried one time to have a relationship with his grandkids. So it is what it is. And, God is my father. But to kind of move on, I ended up, I was working. I graduated. I started working 2 jobs, living with my grandma. My mom ended up having to go to a mental rehabilitation center. And at the time, it didn't really hit me until I had to actually see her in one of those places. And it was heartbreaking to watch her and see her in one of those types of places. But I know she needed it at the time. Now, I probably would have done some things different maybe. But, is what it is. And I got to know my grandma. I mean, my grandma was my mom. I'll just say that. I mean, even throughout my life, I mean, she was always there for us and making sure we were eating and going to church. And, just, I had the best time with my grandma. That was an awesome time for me. And, but, she would drive me just about everywhere. She loved to drive, and we loved to go to Walmart. She was one of them night owls that would, let's go to Walmart or go shopping, and it'd be, 9 or 10 o'clock at night. We would have fun. We'd have a good time. But, so ended up, I had been dating, my boyfriend at the time, not my husband now, but, for a few years, and we ended up moving out to an apartment because my grandma was going to be downsizing to an apartment for herself because, she was getting up in age and things. And so, got my car, got a place to live, and working 2 jobs, going to college, and I was wanting to go to the Air Force at that time. And before I could, I ended up hurting my knee on my second job. And but so I ended up hurting my knee because my second job was I don't know if you know it, but Frontier City. It's basically like a mini Six Flags. And in fact, that year Six Flags bought it out, and that was the year that was the first year, so they didn't have a chance to upgrade the rides and things like that. So there were like multiple issues on different rides, and I had certain rides that I would do, and one of them they would put me in the kiddie area every once in a while when they were short staffed, and I had to do these little kiddie canoes, and it was like this little river float, for little kids, and there was supposed to be a pump pushing water, making the canoes float. Well, the pump, wasn't pumping. And so I had to push the canoes with an oar all the way around, to get them moving. And somehow or another, I twisted my knee, did something, I don't know. But from that moment on, my gosh, physical therapy, they botched my knee surgery, and I mean, it was just something. So after my first surgery, of course, I couldn't go to the military, and I ended up having to have a second knee surgery, like, I don't know, 2 years later or something like that. And luckily this one fixed it, and this surgeon fixed it. I didn't have any of the, the disability and things like that. And got married. I ended up having my first pregnancy, I had a miscarriage, so that was rough. And then I ended up getting pregnant again, and had my boy Tyler, and then I think he was, a year old, and I was able to go. I passed the test, and they passed me, and I went to the Air Force, the reserves, because I couldn't, at that time, my husband at that time was in the reserves also, and that you couldn't do the active duty. Two parents cannot be active duty. And so I was there, ended up hurting myself there, which they tried to tie it into my knee, and they separated me, and which was really rough because I enjoyed it. That first call home, I wasn't crying. I was having a good time. And I remember my dad telling me one time, if you ever go to the military, you would be laughing at the TI, because basically my dad was, hard compared to the TI. And he was right. I mean, like, it was a cakewalk to me. Total cakewalk. It was like, and then watching these other kids, I was older going into it. I think I was, I don't even remember how old I was going into it. 22, 23, something like that. I don't remember how, but I was an older one. Most of them were, 18, 19, kids right out of high school. And seeing those, struggle, and, it's all kind of I wouldn't say a game, but it's all played out. They have to weed out the ones that can't take the stress and things. And, so it was hard watching these others, that couldn't make it and stuff. And And then, of course, I ended up hurting my knee again. And they wanted to blame it on my previous surgeries. And they were like, well, we'll have to separate you and all this kind of stuff. So I ended up getting out. And they said, well, get your surgeon to pass it and you can come back in. Well, I did that. It was a stress fracture. It wasn't even tied to my knee. I mean, it was in the same vicinity, but it wasn't even, my lateral release on my knee. And I had my surgeon write a whole thing. I tried to get back in, and they, on my birthday, called me and said, I'm sorry, you can't go back in. So that was rough because I was so gung-ho patriotic and, wanted to fight for my country. And I had worked for FAA and I was at the academy there. And, when 9/11 happened, I worked extra when they were looking for the, U.S. Marshals to, fly on airlines, where they were sending in their resumes and stuff like that. We would actually receive them and scan them and put them through. And so I would work overtime doing that on top of my regular job there at FAA. And, but anyway, so there went military and started working for a security company, which is, I didn't even realize I was applying to a security company. It was pretty funny, actually, how that landed. I was going to go work back for FAA, but the security company offered me a higher pay, so I went there. And and so here we are, security. But I think my son at that time was about 7 or 8 years old, and I ended up getting a divorce from his dad. I won't go into it. I won't talk bad about, him or anything, but, I won't, go into that. But, and then after I got a divorce, I ended up, I was already friends with Michael, and because we worked at the same place. And then later, we moved positions and, or companies actually. And, we started dating and ended up getting pregnant and before we were married and all this kind of stuff. And, the way we got together wasn't the right way. And, there's a lot of things that I regret or wish things were different. But, in the end, God puts it all together. He makes things work and, it works out. And have our beautiful little boy, Nathan, and who's just, I love him, love him dearly. And I know he's anointed to be, I believe, a prophet. I didn't name him after Nathan in the Bible, and it just so happened. But God's showing me that he is anointed, and I believe he will be a prophet one day. Whenever, God says it's time, But so anyways, we started our own security company back in 2014 and built it up, and here we are today. And 40 years old. God blessed us with another little boy. Together we have 6 boys, and it's been fun. It's been hard. I mean, there's hard times, and especially when you're married to somebody that's just as stubborn and hard-headed and bullheaded and driven like me. It's it can be hard sometimes, especially working together. Let me tell you, that's not easy. That's not easy. And, you just have to figure it out and kind of make sure you have date nights and things like that. And, you know, uh, but here we are with the ministry. God started having us look into our ancestry and finding some different things out, and just has really, and it started giving, me prophetic dreams, and giving Michael some prophetic, dreams as well, and just kind of coming together and figuring all this out, and that he's called us to ministry. And our main emphasis are on children, and the things that the thing that God has highlighted to me especially is my grandma. I mean, I have a lot of dreams with my grandma, and I know that whatever mantle that she held, or that was placed on her, I have it. And my grandma was real big on making sure children knew who Jesus was, or who Jesus is, and the love of Jesus. And I mean, she cared for children. She always worked in the nursery at the church, and always had her goldfish and cups of water, and just always little treats for kids. And Christmases, she would have the little candy canes that talked about what the candy cane meant, as far as Jesus goes, and during Christmas time. And she would always hand out the little, pamphlets on Halloween about Jesus and knowing who he is. And, she just was very loving and caring. And she, man, let me tell you, and she helped start the church there in her neighborhood years and years ago. And I feel like God's having me carry the torch, and just to be able to give a place where let me back up. God has really given us direction to do a camp for kids, a campground camp where kids can go. And these kids are going to be just from wherever, if they're foster kids, if they're, Native American, whether they're, coming out of trafficking even, you guys. I mean, that's something that Lord's showing me years ago. When he first started speaking to me, that was big. The things that these children have seen and witnessed and just have gone through. It's horrifying. And I believe that God wants us to do a campground in order for kids to be able to be kids, period. They should know what it's like to be a child, have some time away from the adult situations, have time away from, having to emotionally feel like they're, maybe supporting one of their parents, or whatever they're going through, or whatever the case may be. They should just be allowed to be kids, and they should know who Jesus is. They should know the love that God has for them, the love that Jesus has for them, and the love that the Holy Spirit has for them, and that, the Holy Spirit is with them and wants to know them, and be with them everywhere they go. God gives them protection with angels all around them. just so they feel loved. And, if I can be a part of that, if I can facilitate that, be a vessel for that, I'm all in. I am all in. And they should know who Jesus is and how much he loves them. And you guys, this isn't easy to talk about. And I tried to do this video yesterday, but I was a total ball bag. And today's a little bit easier for me because, that was my rehearsal, I guess. I was going to put it out, but then I thought, no, I'm missing some things. I kind of veered off on accident and missed a few important things. And so to say all this, right now we're wanting to do ministry full time. We're kind of transitioning from our business, from our security company, into, the ministry, however God leads us to do it. Right now, he's leading us with the campgrounds and doing revivals there. And so whenever he gives me the call to the next one, I'm on it. Right now, he's kind of giving me some time to really focus and get, more direction from him and just take care of some situations right now. And but as soon as he gives me the go ahead, I will let you guys know where our next revival is. But you guys, if you have any questions, if you need to talk about anything, you're more than welcome to contact us. If you need prayer, you can send us your prayer requests here on the website, thecampbellrevival.com. And of course, if we've prayed over you, I definitely want to hear good reports and stuff. So I love you guys, and I will talk to you guys later. Thank you.